to invite people. So keep that in mind, April 11th, 5 to 7 p.m. Just a couple weeks after that, we are doing our first ever songwriters workshop. This is going to be a lot of fun. April 25th. This is an all-day Saturday event starting at 9:30 in the morning, going through the end of encounter service, so 9:30 to 7 p.m. This is a full day of worshiping together, songwriting training, and time actually writing. So there's going to be hands-on activities where you break up in groups and you actually write songs. Like everyone who comes to this will write songs during the course of that day. And it's just such an incredible way to encounter God and stretch yourself creatively a little bit. And I think two of the songs we did tonight were originals from Tyler. And so it's really cool just to see how God births those songs and they become part of our community life. So this QR code will take you to the website, and you can see the information and see the sign up. It is $25, and it is limited to 20 people. Last I heard, I think there were a handful signed up. There were 7 signed up. That was a few days ago. It's probably more by now. But those spots are filling up. So if you want to jump in on this, you have to sign up so that we don't run out of space for you, because we do want it to be very hands-on, and if we had a full room, then we wouldn't be able to make it actually as personally involved. So sign up on our website, and then that encounter service, this is going to kind of be like the fun capstone of the songwriting workshop. We're going to do a showcase of the songs that were written that day will be showcased in encounter service. So if you're in the workshop, you can look forward to that. If you're not in the workshop, you can look forward to that. It'll be a really fun time to just hear from what God wrote through these people during that day. So with all of that, I'll invite up Brad.
Give that man a piece of paper. Okay. Well, so grateful to be here doing this, teaching on the vow of David. It's an awesome subject that I'm stoked about. I'm going to pray and then we'll jump in. Lord, so thankful for David. Thank you, Lord, for having him and getting so much about his life documented for us, that we could study this deep burning passion that he had in his heart for you to have a house of prayer. And then we could talk about it however long later. Thank you, Lord. We ask you tonight, would you release fresh revelation about this promise that David made to you in his youth, in Jesus' name. Amen. The vow of David, this is session 5 entitled A Costly Offering. My family just started last night watching the new David series. It's on Netflix. Forget what it's called. House of David, I think is what it's called. Anyway, there's some parts about it that, are probably not exactly how things went, but I think they do a good job of the point. When people talk about David, they are not talking at all about the line of thinking that we're going into in this series. And I think, and I want to say this kindly, but I think are completely missing who David is. I think that all of the portrayals of David that we've got in various, movies and this and that's and storybooks, I think they all focus on the surface stuff of who David was. He was a king. He was a warrior. A lot of times they'll touch on the fact that he was a really devout lover of God. That's true. That's absolutely a true piece of who he is. But even that doesn't really capture who he is, because there's been lots of devout lovers of God in the Bible. But David was different for some reason. And that's really what we're doing in this series. We're talking about really the essence of the man. And it's this vow that he made when he was in his youth. And so what we're going to look at tonight is we're going to look at the cost of this offering. We're going to do a little bit of comparison of David's life and also ours, and the points that have some parallels as we try to build God a house of prayer. But tonight, really, we're going to focus on this aspect of his heart and his nature. And I'll say this, in line of thinking that I was just describing about this series that's out, that, I mean, it's got a lot about it that's great, but it's missing who he is. I think we're all missing who he is until we've till we've divin into this line of thinking, and that is what it is that God said set David apart and made him so different. So I want to invite you to the following idea. I think tonight, if this isn't a subject you've studied already, I think there's going to be a lot of brand new ideas to you. And so I'm excited to be able to unpack it. David's commitment was well known in Israel. So the commitment is the vow. He made this vow in his youth that he would not rest until he saw God have a resting place, a dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant where God would be worshiped night and day. David made that vow in his youth. And this made him different because it wasn't just a vow that he made when he was 12. It's a vow that he carried all his days, all the decades of his life, all the way to his deathbed. This is a remarkable vow that was made in his youth and was carried for decades all the way till his death. His dying wishes were about this same subject. I mean, this is just a profound storyline of the man. And so we really don't want to make our main thing about David is that he was king or a warrior. He killed a Goliath or a bear or a lion, and that's not really who he was. All right, so in this little introduction here, I want us to note that the cost that David had to pay, the price, both the price that he paid of his own choosing and the price that was put upon him for making this vow, made him unique from men, but made him unique from other kings. He was a profoundly different man. There was a stigma, and we're going to talk about some of that. The stigma that actually I think God permits, I think he allows the stigma for those that would make this commitment, no matter what it takes, I will build your house of prayer. No matter what that costs me, I will build your house. I will see to it that you have a resting place where your presence is tended to in my city. And that's, in essence, the vow that David made. We know that. That's Psalm 132. But Psalm 69 tells us some of the details of some of the stigma, some of the burden that he had to carry. And so I'm just going to give us a little intro, and we'll touch on some points of this a little bit later in this session. Psalm 69, verse 7 through 12. For your sake, I have borne reproach. Now, just think of this. This is David writing a song that would be sung in David's tabernacle. Psalm 69, written by David. For your sake, I have borne reproach. Shame has covered my face. I have become a stranger to my brothers, an alien to my mother's children. Why? Because he loves God? Is it because he's a king? Is it because he's a musician? Why has he borne reproach? Because zeal for your house has eaten me up or consumed me. In other translations. This is the verse that gets quoted by the apostles about Jesus when Jesus walks into the temple courts and he clears the courts. And they say, we remember it was written, zeal for your house has consumed me. But this is now the original David, not the son of David. This is David. And David is writing, I have borne reproach. There are people that think I'm funny and they make fun of me. We'll look about a couple more verses here in a second. I'm taking it on the chin. Why? Because I've been so zealous to build the house of prayer. That's the reason I'm bearing reproach. Not because I love God, not because I killed a lion or a bear, not because of any, it's because I have been so zealous to see the house of prayer built. And the reproaches of those who reproach you, God, have fallen on me. When I wept and I chastened my soul with fasting, that became my reproach. He says, now, because I've been a person who's fasted in relationship to this subject of worshiping God and building him a night and day house of prayer, that has now also become my reproach. I became a byword to them. That's interesting. Those who sit at the gate speak against me. I'm the song of the drunkards. This is interesting. It's so easy to brush past Psalm 69 and think that the reproach was because David was a wild worshiper of God. David's wild worship of God, the thing that bore him reproach was his demand, his emphatic requirement that the house of God be built the way that he wanted it built. Night and day, prayer and worship. For this reason, he bore reproach. All right. Well, we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll come back to that point. I want to talk about the ways that David fulfilled the vow. We know that he did, but what did he do? And I want to remind us of a verse that we've looked at in a previous session, that the prophet Isaiah, by the Lord's purposes, called David a witness to the peoples and to the generations of the earth. I want us to look at what David did to build the house of prayer, to fulfill the vow. I want us to see these points. I want us to take it as a witness, as a model to us of what, if we want to be like David in our generation, what are some of the things that we could be eyeballing? Because these are the things he did to make the vow happen, okay? There's, again, the verse in Isaiah 55 that God made David a witness. All right, how did David fulfill the vow? Practically, what did he do? Well, he used his relationships. He's leveraged his relationships to see the house of prayer built. Now, I will give you a little bit of a kind of an overview here. I'm going to be skipping throughout the various seasons of David's life and talking about aspects where he was utilizing certain things or doing certain things to build the house of prayer. These are not chronological, okay? These are like a sample. I will not rest. I'll give no slumber to my eyes, no rest to my eyelids until I have established a dwelling place, a resting place for the Most High. Like he got the Ark of the Covenant, he put it in Jerusalem, and he surrounded it with thousands of singers and musicians. This is what fulfilling the vow meant to David. All right, so what did he do? He used his relationships. Every available resource at David's disposal was utilized to fulfill this vow. First, his privileged connections. He had gotten good standing with the king of Tyre and of Sidon. And those were areas in Lebanon where he would wind up getting cedar trees later in order to be able to build the house of prayer. I want you to put yourself in David's shoes and go, well, I'm not friends with kings of nations, but what relationships do it? He used his influence of these these are his friends that he's built relationship with over the course of the last decade. Set apart some of the sons of Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun for the ministry of prophesying, accompanied by harps, lyres, and cymbals. David has partnered with his friends. He's utilized the relationships of his friends. The only way that was able to be hard. Otherwise, why friendships? Overstatement. It seemed like, had been readied all the days of his life to be a house of prayer guy. Whereas all the other sons of David, they didn't necessarily go that route and didn't receive that kind of coaxing and education. I think it was very intentional. He used his family relationships to build the house of prayer. He saw his son and thought, this is my legacy. I'm going to ingrain into my son, Solomon, the same values for the house of prayer that I have, so that when I pass, he'll carry this tradition into the next generation. That's profound. He used his authority. David leveraged his authority as king in order to build the house of prayer. We see him taking full advantage of this position. That is just so not how people think and talk. Like, I'm going to use my position of authority to build the house of prayer. He wasn't a house of prayer director. He was a king. Like, it makes sense if a house of prayer director does it. He's a king of a nation, and he leverages his kingship to fulfill a vow he made when he was 12. He appointed people to serve. 4,000 are to be gatekeepers. 4,000 are to praise the Lord with musical instruments. I provided for that purpose. The list got a lot longer. There's a lot more going on. But I just want you to think about 8,000 people who were doing something yesterday. They had a job. They had life. Life looked a certain way. And he said, no, I'm king. I now apportion you. I change your role in life and in our nation and in the infrastructure of how Israel runs. Now, you 4,000 are singers and musicians. You 4,000 are helper bees. I need a 1-for-1 ratio. I need 8,000 of you in some version of full-time employment. Again, that would have looked a little different in David's generation, but that's not a terrible way to approach the idea. 8,000 full-timers to run David's house of prayer. And he wasn't able to do that as a guy in Israel. He did it as the king of Israel. He leveraged his position. He used his authority. He made multi-generational protocols. David had said, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has granted rest to his people and has come to dwell in Jerusalem forever, the Levites no longer need to carry the tabernacle or any of its articles used in its service. According to the last instructions of David. Think about that. This is a guy in his final years. According to the last instructions of David's, the Levites were counted from those 20 years old or more, which it had previously been 30. The duties of the Levites were to help Aaron's descendants in the service of the temple of the Lord. This is multi-generational protocols that have been established. And there's other verses that point to it, but I just want you to think about this, that David's rewriting the way that things go, and he's changing destiny of family lines. Like, this is what you and your sons and their sons after them will do. That is profound. I just can't even imagine having that sort of authority. This is now what your life will be. It will be forever tied to the house of prayer. It will be forever tied to a vow beyond belief. David was right. So David is really calling the nation stuff. He had to make major decisions, financial policies. Okay? Before David's tabernacle, there was zero funding going to David's tabernacle. But now David's tabernacle needs up and running, and the musical instruments need to be upkept, and all the finances to keep these Levites fed now in this line of work. Clans. David wasn't the one to build the temple, it was Solomon, but it was via David's, it was the saluting of dad. Yes, sir. That had been specifically set aside for the heads of Levite families to, okay? So here we have this. Those who were musicians, top of page 3, who were responsible for the work night and day. Well, how were they responsible for the work? Who is it that put them in charge? Leaders. These would have been like, our section leaders, if you will. Like the section leaders all get a house. He leveraged it in order to build the house of prayer to fulfill this vow he made in his youth. All right, letter C. He pursued prerequisite projects. I didn't know how else to say this, except that there were things that had to be done before David could fulfill his vow. And so here's a few of them. This is not really a fulfill or a project, but it's part of the process. Psalm 132, verse 13. So now David is responsible for information. Oh, you like Mount Zion. You want this 24/7 house of prayer, but you don't want it anywhere willy-nilly. You want it on Mount Zion. I now have a responsibility to go get you Mount Zion. So what happens? Well, 2 Samuel 5, 6 through 7, he captured Zion from the Jebusites. First, order of business to fulfill God's desire. But David had likely known that detail from his youth, that God desired Mount Zion to be the place that David would establish David's vow. He buys the Temple Mount from Araunah the Jebusite. Araunah was still there. Araunah owned the land up on the top where the temple would be built later, where David's tabernacle would operate first. And David buys the dirt. And that's the passage where it says, I will not offer to the Lord my God sacrifices that cost me nothing. It will be executed on. And just all that went into place for you and the ark of your might. I'm going to build it for the ark of the covenant because I know your presence rests on it. So he brought it up twice. And then he sought to build the temple. The Lord wouldn't let him. So then he commissioned his son to build the temple, and he made every provision. The use of his time. Again, I'm just looking at what did David use to fulfill the vow. And I'm looking and be learning from the way that David operated. What are some carryovers into our lives? He used his time. I gave you the Psalm 27:4. I won't go through it again because we spent some time on it in a previous session. But one thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. This is a serious time commitment. David made time in order to build the house because we recognize it's not about the building. The building is helpful. It's about all the logistics for sustaining it. And some would go, man, it was awesome when we were building this building because then I got to build the house of the Lord. You're building the house of prayer. You're doing David's vow in 2026. It's all pieces of it. He used his energy. I'm not going to point to any Bible verses for this one. I'm sure there are some. I was just thinking from firsthand knowledge, the amount of effort it takes to keep a 4-hour-a-day worship sanctuary. We're doing it 22 hours a day. It takes so much energy. I mean, we just got talking about coming back from our senior staff work retreat. We do that every year, so we've got an additional 20 hours or 30 hours of meeting time that we can sneak in order to build out prayer. It takes tremendous work. It's a lot of energy. And so what that means is that energy is now going towards this initiative, fulfilling the vow of David, building the house of prayer, which means it's not going to other things. So David there was a measure of taxing and depletion of his energy and his time because it's going towards building the house of prayer. He spoke about it constantly. Look at this verse in Psalm 26. I gave you a few others. He would speak about this often. It was just a common theme throughout his life. But it shows up in the Psalms a few times. Look at this. David, I wash my hands in innocence and go about your altar. Lord, proclaiming aloud your praises and telling of all your wonderful deeds. Lord, I love the house where you live, the place where your glory dwells. This is David talking about him coming and running the altar of the Lord's presence and living in that as a reality. He says, I love it here. I love to be here. This is David fulfilling the Psalm 27:4, Lord, I just want to go to your house of prayer 7 days a week for the rest of my life. Here he is on one of those days. He's in the room or in the tent, and he's going, I love it here. This is great. David would speak about this often. He set himself to build God a temple. Again, the temple, the measure of God would have a temple. It was built so that David's tabernacle worship offering to God, house of prayer, would have a permanent structure in which to operate, because there's all sorts of challenges trying to we really do need to start thinking temple, equal sign, 24/7 house of prayer. And maybe, the biggest that was worship order, but now even in his death, for God. If we say for God, we've missed the point. He built a temple. David, this whole storyline. I mean, it's interesting. He doesn't do it, so he's not in trouble with God because he didn't actually get the hammer out on his watch and start. But my percentage of the work is just the architectural planning and the financial. David did all of that and then purposed, because I know better. And you're going to build God's 24/7. David could not have. That's just wild. So David made extensive preparations. Look at this. As I do, it's really important you understand what that temple was and who it was built for and what was going on there, because it was for the 24/7 house of prayer. David said, my son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house to be built for the Lord should be of great magnificence and fame and splendor in the sight of the nations. Therefore, I will make preparations for it. So David made extensive preparations before his death. Here he is. He's nearing his death, and he is still all about this vow he made when he was 12. I mean, that is such a rare thing in life for anybody to stay that steadfast and consistent and focused for that many decades. It's wild. All right, now, I'm going to give you some gold and silver conversion numbers. My goal here isn't to be 100% accurate. My goal is to give you an idea, okay? Just as a little point of order, I did the math on what an ounce of gold, the price of gold per ounce was just a couple of days ago on the 26th. And as of the 26th, it's probably even different today. But as of the 26th, an ounce of gold was worth about $4,500. Okay, in modern numbers. An ounce of silver was worth about $73. This matters because of what we're going to look at here in a second is flabbergasting. There's a fun word to say loudly on a microphone I just found. Flabbergasting. This is a wild, wild thing that we're about to read. Okay? All right. So, a talent, because the measurements in the Bible aren't in modern ounces. They're made in talents, okay? A talent was a measure of weight, just like an ounce is a measure of weight. A talent is worth or a talent is approximately 1,200 ounces, okay? So every time you read talent, think 1,200 ounces, all right? That makes one talent worth $5,400,000, all right? One talent of gold. Now of silver, 1,200 ounces times $73 would equal $87,600, okay? I just want you to have some numbers to look at here. David used the national treasury. I just cannot even imagine what would happen if the President of the United States said, hey, we're going to go ahead and siphon off a significant chunk of the national treasury, and we're going to build my pet project that I've been dreaming about since I was 12. And we're going to build God a house of prayer. We're going to build him, the thing that you guys haven't all particularly loved and been on board with, where I've got all the singers and musicians out there in the tent. Yeah, well, we're going to spend several $100 billion building them a building so they can move into the building. That is a wild idea, and it is exactly what David did. He used the national treasury, the resources of the government of Israel, in order to build God a house of prayer. Look at what it says here. This is bottom of page 4, 1 Chronicles 22. I have taken great pains to provide for the temple of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold. 1,000,000 talents of silver. Remember, a talent's worth 1,200 ounces. 1,000,000 talents of silver. Quantities of bronze and iron, too great to be weighed, and wood and stone, and Solomon, you may add to it. This is wild. Okay, so that you can do the math there. I think I included it in the little subtext. Yeah, $450 billion worth of gold. Holy moly. And then 87 billion in silver. So over 600, is that my math right? Over 500? Yeah, over $600 billion building. David has just spent $600 billion posthumously on a building to fulfill a vow he made when he was 12. This is just wild, lavish, unbelievable. And so now we're like watching a series, my family, we're watching this series on David, and we're like, look how great of a warrior he was. I was like, we have completely missed the point of this man. He was a warrior, kind of like he liked the color orange. It was just a side thing. That was not who he was. He was a 24/7 house of prayer guy. And he spent $600 billion of the government's money to build a house of prayer to fulfill a vow from when he was 12. All right, then he used his personal finances. Look at this. It's one thing to have used the government's money. Now we see he let it touch him personally as well. With all my resources, I have provided for the temple of my God. Gold for the gold work, silver for the silver, bronze for the bronze, iron for the iron, and wood for the wood, as well as onyx for the settings, turquoise, stones of various colors, all kinds of fine stone and marble, all of these in large quantities. Besides, in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give my personal treasures of gold and silver for the temple of my God. Over and above everything I provided for this holy temple, 3,000 talents of gold and 7,000 talents of refined silver for the overlaying of the walls of the buildings, for the gold work and the silver work. He used his own money too. Lots of it. You can do the math on that later. Wow. He enlisted a massive workforce. Kind of touched on this a little bit already, but just look at this line, 1 Chronicles 22. Then David ordered all the leaders of Israel to help his son Solomon. All the leaders of Israel. Hey, are you a leader? Yep. Leader of what? Leader of sanitation. Great. You're going to help my son Solomon. Well, do what? Build a house of prayer. Any other leaders? Yeah, I've got a leadership responsibility in this area, this area. All the leaders. Do you know what all the leaders means? It means all the people. Because if all the leaders are tasked, leaders, if they're worth their weight at all, aren't going to go do the work by themselves merely. They're going to enlist people. They're going to get the job done with those that they're giving leadership to, because that's what leaders do. It's the passage in the fivefold ministry of in Ephesians of God gave, or Jesus appointed, pastors, teachers, prophets, evangelists, and apostles to instruct the church and to equip them to do the work of the ministry. So these leaders are now enlisting people. This is him getting the whole nation to be bothered by his pet project to get his vow fulfilled. This is just crazy. He enlisted every kind of craftsman. You have many workmen, stonecutters, masons, and carpenters, as well as men skilled in every kind of work, in gold and silver, bronze and iron, craftsmen beyond number. Now, Solomon, begin the work, and the Lord will be with you. David's lined it all up. He has done everything to build God this temple. All right, now let's talk about some of the conflicts because of the vow that he made. And again, what makes this series and this subject so interesting is you really could say synonymously, the vow means build the 24/7 house of prayer. I mean, that's not that is what it is. There's more to it than that, but that's what the vow is. So when we're talking about the vow, it's not so much that he whispered words when he was a kid. It's those whispered words that were real in his heart, that God took serious, that God backed the play, that then David lived out for decades. It cost him again and again to continue to uphold this vow that was in his heart. It was viewed as a waste, as dumb, as dangerous. And I just want to touch on that for just a second, the then and the now. David bore reproach because of this vow. And if you make this vow, or some version of it, you too will bear reproach. I've seen it for 20 years. It's a lot less today than it was in the early days. But even now, and part of that is because everybody's gotten used to us and stopped making fun of us. You know, it's like, they're just still over there doing it. But in the early days, there was significant reproach for all of us that were building the house of prayer. Our families were like, why can't you do something normal? You know, like, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. And then trying to raise missionary support. People were like, support what? You just sit in a room and do nothing. And trying to get a loan. Oh my gosh, for years we couldn't get a loan because they were like, well, do you collect tithes? No. How are you going to be funded? Well, somehow we're still here. It's like, I mean, it was just reproach at every angle. And then, even to this day, as people come into the community new and their families are not familiar with what we're doing here, then they have to bear reproach. So while it's not all of us together anymore like it was in the early days, that still happens. There is reproach that is being bared because of the vow, because of the commitment to build God a 24/7 house of prayer. Psalm 132 reminds us of this. Oh, Lord, remember David and all the hardships he endured. It's interesting, that phrase in Psalm 132 isn't elaborated on in Psalm 132, but it is elaborated on in Psalm 69, which is why we started there, and we're going to look at it a little bit more right now. Serious conflict with his family. So now we're looking at the reproach, we're looking at the difficulties, we're looking at, all the good stuff of David building the house of prayer. We've talked about that. We've harped on that back and forth for weeks. But now, what were some of the costs? What were some of the challenges? Look at this. I endure scorn for your sake, and shame covers me. I am a stranger to my brothers and an alien in my own mother's sons, for zeal for your house consumes me. It wasn't because David was a worshiper or this or that. He said, my family thinks I'm off. My family thinks I'm crazy. It's because I've got zeal. I'm fulfilling this vow. And I've got conflict in my own family as a result of it. His wife was embarrassed by him. We know this story, but if we don't connect the context of the story, we've completely missed the point. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. She despised him in her heart. Michal said, how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going about half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. David said to Michal, it was before the Lord who chose me. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated even in my own eyes. Okay, we know the passage, but do we understand the context? This wasn't David just getting a little loosey-goosey in a worship service and run around naked. This is David who this moment is bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. This is David fulfilling the vow. He's bringing the Ark, and every 7 steps they were sacrificing animals and stuff. This dude has been sweating and dancing and going for it all day. And now he walks into Jerusalem and he's out of his mind excited. I made this vow when I was a kid. And today we do it. Today we do it. He is the happiest, the most excited. God is looking at him and I just think God's eyes were just fixed on David that day. And David is worshiping with all his might. And his wife despises him because she completely missed the point. She doesn't know David. She doesn't understand the vow. She doesn't care. She's saying, I can't believe that you're dancing around like this, that you're just so uncareful today. He's like, today is my day. Today is the biggest day in my life in one regard. It's the day we finally start the vow. Everything up to this point was building to this moment, and now he's finally done it. And this is actually his second run at it, because he tried to bring the Ark of the Covenant before, and so Michal is just like, we've completely missed this. This is a house of prayer passage. This mocking of Michal against David is a house of prayer passage, not a, oh yeah, I knew all of Saul's kids were bad passage. This is a house of prayer passage. This isn't even about, I'll be more dignified than this. I mean, I'm grateful for that line that serves us in various ways, but that's not the point of the passage. The point of the passage is, this is David's entry point to bring the ark and put it under the tent and start the priesthood that day. That's what's going on. He had strife with those that he led. Look at this. People make sport of me. Those who sit at the gate mock me. I'm the song of the drunkards. These are awful reproaches. He's the king of Israel. It's like, why? This is all still Psalm 69. It's all because of zeal for your house has consumed me. People don't get me. People don't understand. I'm all about fulfilling this vow. And so he was a byword to the general population. A byword? New King James says that they make sport of him. Like they're making fun of him. He's become like a slang term. Oh, you gonna David that thing? I mean, it's like they're making sport of him. This is the king of Israel. This is embarrassing. Like, this is inappropriate. Why are they doing it? Because they don't get it. They weren't appreciating David's vow. They had no clue that David's vow equaled their nation being blessed. They had no appreciation for David's sacrifice. All they saw was silly little dancing king. You know, we've just got a dancing king. He likes to sing and dance. And so then they're saying stuff about him like that. The nation does not understand the gift of God that David was, and that David's vow being realized was in their nation. They don't get it. So he's become a byword to the general population. He was mocked by the spiritual and political leaders. It says, those that sit at the gate mock me. Those that sit at the gate, it's talking about the gate elders and those that they have leadership roles in the nation, both spiritual and political. And they're mocking him as this fanatic. Like, we don't get him either. The leaders of Israel. He became a song to the town drunks? What in the world is that? You walk by the tavern. I just imagine, David being incognito and walking past the tavern just to see what was going on there and hearing his name. He's like, oh, maybe they're singing about me. He walks in and he hears, oh, they're singing about silly song boy, our king, the little wussy guy that likes to dance. And they're singing. about David that they don't get. He's become a byword. He's a reproach. The drunks are making songs about him. This is crazy. They're not making songs about him because he was a leader, because he killed a lion or a bear. They are giving him the spiritual pushback where God sees David and esteems. Men, the flesh, the devil see David and mock and belittle and ridicule. He was maligned by other leaders. This is a bit of conjecture, but it seems pretty likely that if his own leaders think he's the funny singing, dancing boy, that he's probably taking it on the chin from other national leaders as well. Like, isn't this the guy that killed that Goliath? And isn't this the guy that killed the lion and the bear? And what's he about now? Like, now his kingship, like, tell me what he does now. He says one thing. He just wants to go to the house of prayer every day and sing to God. Like, this would have been, this would have cost him relationships in the political realm as well. This would have been challenging. All right, as we wrap up, real hindrances to fulfilling the vow. This is now where I want us to take a look at ourselves. I just want you to, I want to clarify something. When I say take the vow, I don't fully know what I mean. I'm not trying to get you to sign a piece of paper that says I will make the same vow David made for all my decades. I'm just wanting you to see David's vow and figure out what you're going to do with it. And then make that vow, whatever that looks like, for a season, for your whole life at this level, for your whole life at some level. But I just want you to see David's vow. He's a witness to us. And I want you to be challenged by it. And I want you to, but this subject matters to me. It's in my heart. It's real to me. And I just want it to be real to you to whatever degree, the Lord would nudge you for it to be real to you. But I will tell you we've seen in the life of David, but I just know these to be true. That's the goal. Then I want to further invite you into making this a reality in your life, but also to be a friend to you and warn you about some of the challenges that are absolutely related from others in the body of Christ. Steals much from someone who wants to sincerely press into God. I'll tell you this. I have seen many over the years who have actually been stolen out of this house of prayer because of the fear of man, because of the criticism they were receiving from friends and churchgoers and family members and like, what do you do? You're just wasting your time. Stop doing that. Come out with us. Do this thing with us. Stop making that so much a part of your life. Like, reduce that. And it really comes down to fear of criticism. And I'm just telling you, you will face that. And if you face it with your shoulder into it, and you face it, and you face it, and you face it, a time will come where the enemy will stop trying that tactic on you. Like, I can't remember the last time that I faced that particular challenge, and it had any sting on it. Maybe somebody said something, but it's like, it didn't matter to me. I can't remember the last time, but oh my goodness, there was a long season where I was up against that daily, weekly, monthly, for years and years. That was a reality. The desire for comfort. Some will draw back because of the love of comfort and longing for the ease of life. Building God's house, building the house of prayer, it's costly. If it touches nothing else, it will touch your time. Time that could be spent doing something else. And again, you'll have a large crowd of people cheering you on to go spend your time doing all that other stuff. You'll have a large crowd of that. Even your own heart accusing from time to time. But the desire for comfort, again, comfort touches a lot of areas. I'll leave it at that, but I will just hone in on the timing thing. It will cost you time, which means that's not time you're doing something else with your time that was comfortable, that was a hobby or whatever you wanted to be doing with it. Building the house of prayer will touch your comfort. And the desire for that gets in the way. It really does. The desire for wealth, closely related, but not entirely. The desire for wealth, many will simply draw back because they want more money, and this is not a path to riches. My time, my energy here instead of here, then I'll be able to get more money. You're probably right. I don't want to argue, be a part of this to a big degree because I really want these career. Every decision you made. Now, if the Lord says, I want you to be in business in this area because I want you to excel in business in our culture is obnoxiously loud about banging the gong over and over to the point where we're convinced that's the voice of the Lord unless he speaks something different. So follow the leadership of the Lord. Do not follow your flesh. Desire for wealth. I've seen that one take many people out. Some of them said it. Others didn't. And it just came out that it was clear that it's what they were after. Preoccupation with ministry growth. Even in ministry, the house of prayer is a really awful way to try to see ministry growth happen. Like it's the exact opposite. It's like, no, we're actually dialing down. We're in a prayer room. We're touching God. The way the thing down the street looks. Because all the energy that was being spent to get something done for Jesus, most of our energy, not building ministry and seeing things moving forward. We do some of that, but most of our energy is saved and you're just not. It's just, but the longing, the desire, the preoccupation with ministry growth, 2013, where the cool thing to do was to start a house of prayer. And hundreds of them started. Hundreds, all across 2013, 2012, 2013, shut down in the years after. And what would happen is, IHOP Kansas City grew real big, and that totally was an unreal. But there was just started. And hundreds shut down. Experience ministry growth. I thought we were going to see more of this and more of that, and it didn't happen. Or it didn't happen at the pace that people were expecting. And so it's a real hindrance. And it's even the senior staff work retreat that we just got back from. I looked at it, I'm like, there's so much of what we talked about or that we wanted to talk about but couldn't talk about because what that would require is leaving the prayer room to do it. We could get more done if we've just reduced all our missionaries' prayer room hours. We just said, hey, missionaries, don't do a bunch of hours in the prayer room anymore. Do 5 hours, 6 hours a week in the prayer room, and do the rest of it. We're doing what we're doing. And we got a 22-hour-a-day sanctuary that we're lifting up before the Lord. But it's people that stand in the way of seeing the house of prayer established. But just remember, we don't fight a battle against flesh and blood. Used by the devil here sometime recently too. You cut that person off in traffic on their worst day, and they already had the worst day ever. Devil, and you're like, I'm not the devil, I'm just driving it, Anyway, my point is, we don't fight a battle against flesh and blood, and neither do they. And sometimes you're the one. Sometimes you're the devil that is being, not a flesh and blood, sort of a fight in somebody else's mind. So don't be too hard on people. But the point I'm just trying to make is there really will be. You're not in a fight against them. Don't even get mad at them. Have mercy. The entire nation of Israel, led by David, didn't get David. Didn't get him, what he was doing. They're making songs about him. The drunks are singing in the taverns. Just have mercy. Just don't be bothered by that. Don't grow weary. Galatians 6:9, worship leader, you can come on up. Let us not become weary in well-doing. We know what we're doing here. We know what God commissioned us to do. Don't grow weary. I've seen so many grow weary. We have got to, stir ourselves up in our most holy faith. We've got to take our thoughts captive and make them obedient to God. There really is a fight. You're in a spiritual fight. You're in the house of the Lord. You don't think you're going to have opposition in your mind, your soul, your content. Of course you are. You've got to fight. Don't grow weary in well-doing. Well, I thought it would be this by now. Who are you doing it for? Growth of the ministry? Signs and wonders? Revival? Were those really the points of motivation? If that's how you started, I don't judge that. I probably started there. Graduate, upgrade, mature. You cannot let your reason be because of the external circumstances. It's got to be something deeper. He's worthy. That's what burned in David, not I want revival. Not I want to have a big building that'll be flashy to the nations. He was the worth of God. That's why we do this 22 hours a day. It is painstaking, the amount of work and the energy that we put into it. And that's what's required. And the last one I'll give you, reasons that people quit, obstacles that you will face if you make this vow at any level, the lack of resources. It's just a real part of the story. There are seasons where the resources are thinner than others. We have not ever, as a ministry, experienced significant overage. We've had a little bit of overage sometimes. We've had what felt like lack plenty of times. Personal lives. So many of us have been impacted in our personal lives. Don't let lack of resources tell you to quit. Lacking resources is a real problem, but it is not insurmountable. The glint. Like, I'm not going to let lack of resources stop me. I'm going to keep going. I think God is just looking for leaders who will persevere until he brings them the next bucket of money. More people and makes it a little bit sweeter. Be that section leader on that section nobody wants until the Lord brings more people and we can distribute the work a little bit better. I think the Lord's just looking for people that just won't quit, who'll just make this vow like David did. Can you imagine David and the ardence of his soul? And he's told, well, we don't have that many people, so David, you're going to have to do twice as much now. Oh, I quit. Really? Twice as much? Well, he's not worthy then. He's not worthy of twice as much. Like, there is something about the resources, and I just gave you the Nehemiah verse. We've looked at it in a previous session. When there was a lack of resources, human and financial, how did God deal with that? He positioned Nehemiah, and he said, you go tell those jokers to quit it out. Get back to work. I don't care if there's no money, there's no food. Get to working. And then he told the leaders, you better provide for them. You better figure this out. Double down. I just think the house of prayer, the vow of David, a night and day sanctuary where God's presence is worshiped, it's costly. And I don't want to shy back from that cost. I want us to embrace it. So God, we ask you in Jesus' name, life, and help us be like him in Jesus' name. This time we're going to turn this room back into our prayer room. Welcome to hang around and have conversations. If you would just take a minute.